So my computer froze, so this is going to be the second part for the pre-recorded lesson for week 7. We got to, let's see here, we got to alienation, so let me get back there. So we spoke about alienation. The next part of alienation discusses McDonaldization, which sociologist George Ritzer uses this term to describe how the fast food industry applies to work. So there are 4 steps here. There's efficiency, calculability, predictability, and control through technology. So efficiency, our tasks are completed efficiently. Calculability is the size, cost, and time are more important than quality. Predictability is products are standardized. And control through technology, automation replaces human labor. So when you go to McDonald's, you know it's supposed to be fast food. It's supposed to be quick. So you go in, you order your food, and all of that is supposed to be fast and efficient, right? And then the calculability is the size, cost, and time are more important than quality. So here it talks about, and it's just basically stating that, what you get is kind of what you pay for, in the sense that the cost, the size of the small fry, the large fry, the medium fry, and the time spent, that's all more important than the quality of the food or the quality of the service. Predictability is products are standardized, so meaning that you can go to any McDonald's in the country and you know that if you order a Big Mac, that it's going to taste like a Big Mac. When you order chicken nuggets, that they're all going to taste the same, and that the products are all standardized. And then control through technologies, about automation replaces human labor. And like I stated before, we see that now specifically when we go to some McDonald's. Now they're kind of getting rid of the cashiers, where you can, or not the cashier, but where you take the order, you can place it now on a computer. Other forms of automation is, look at the shake machine, which, notoriously never works at McDonald's. But apart from that, it's not somebody making, a shake like you would maybe get at some ice cream shop. It's this machine that's doing all the work, and all they have to do is press a button for, the shake to be dispensed. So, another problem with unemployment is the labor unions and the struggle for worker rights. So, labor unions are worker advocacy organizations that develop to protect workers and represent them at negotiations between management and labor. There are benefits and disadvantages of labor unions and to workers. And there's a decline currently of union density. Union density is the percentage of workers who belong to unions. So back in the 70s, there was a lot of unions, not so much today. One union right now that we hear maybe a lot about is the police union, and how, things that we see in the news with everything that's going on and the protests and police brutality. The police union is there to defend cops at the end of the day. Not only for negotiations between, management and labor, but you could see now how the labor union also, wants to protect their laborers from even social issues as well. So labor unions are corporate Antunian activities, Antunian legislation, weak U.S. labor laws, and labor union struggles around the world. So the thing with labor unions, like I said, there's benefit and disadvantages. For the most part, there's a teachers union, and like we saw in the video, one of the videos earlier, how they're mostly for service type industry workers. There's a give and take. There's the good and bad that comes with labor unions. But at the end of the day, their main goal is to protect the worker, and make sure that the worker is happy. So strategies for action, responses to problems. So one of the responses is to reduce unemployment, which they offer services like workforce development. In 1998, the Workforce Investment Act provides a wide array of programs and services designed to assist individuals to prepare for and find employment. These include the following: assessments of skills and abilities, access to job vacancy listings, job search and placement assistance, individual career planning and counseling, resume preparation, English as a second language instruction, computer literacy, wage subsidies for on-the-job training, support service such as transportation and childcare to enable individuals to participate in WIA programs. Another response is job creation and preservation. In a national poll, 1 in 4 Americans said that the best way to create more U.S. jobs is to keep manufacturing jobs in the United States and stop sending work overseas. So another thing is unemployment insurance, a federal state program that temporarily provides laid off workers with a portion of their paychecks. So we're hearing a lot of right now, let's talk about the unemployment insurance, which is basically unemployment benefits, which many people are on because of the current situation with the pandemic and so many people losing their jobs. But though this is a great strategy, we're finding now here in Florida that many people are not receiving their unemployment checks. And it looks as or appears as state and local government have made it hard for individuals to receive their money. And this is basically money that when you get paid, they take a portion out of your paycheck, and some of that portion goes into unemployment benefits. So it's not like you're quote unquote, like a lot of people like to say, milking the system. At the end of the day, this is money that they've taken out of your paycheck, and put it aside for benefits just such as this. So, and then the first point on this slide is job creation. And it talks about manufacturing jobs in the U.S. and to keep them here, and to stop sending work overseas. And that sounds like a great idea. It's not something that I'm against. But with that also comes the fact that then we're going to pay a lot more for the products that are developed here or made here. So, for example, if a cell phone was made here 100% in the United States, they would cost a lot more than what we pay now, which they're pretty expensive now for some cell phones, such as the iPhone. Even clothes, H&M and Forever 21 is cheap because it's made in other countries. So you can go to Forever 21 and find a top for $20, sometimes $9, $15, depending on a sale or original price or whatever. But if that same garment was made in the United States, it's going to, I would say it's almost going to be double the price. And again, I'm not saying I'm for using workers overseas, but we must discuss the reality of the situations and what it would happen and what it would look like if manufacturing jobs would come back to the U.S. So another response is worker cooperatives. And this conversation started in 2007 due to the global financial crisis. Worker cooperatives or workers' self-directed enterprises are business owned and governed by the employees. So this is basically, instead of having one person own a company, it's a company that's owned by and governed by actually all the employees. And there are some corporations like that now, some businesses just like that now, where everybody gets paid the same, everybody is treated the same, and many of them are successful. So this is not an idea that's unattainable. So another response is efforts to end slavery, child labor, and sweatshop labor. One strategy to fight slavery is punishment, of course. Convicted slave traffickers in the United States are subject to prison sentences. U.S. corporations are also being held accountable for enterprises that involve forced labor and other human rights and labor violations. And education is a primary means to combat child labor. Another strategy is the Fair Labor Association, which was established in 1996, is a coalition of companies, universities, and non-governmental organizations that works to promote adherence to international labor standards and improve working conditions worldwide. More than 40 leading companies that sell brand name apparel, footwear, and other goods voluntarily participated in the FLA's monitoring system, which inspects their overseas factories and requires them to meet minimum labor standards, such as not requiring workers to work more than 60 hours a week. Which, look at those hours. 60 hours a week is a lot of hours. Here we see 40 as full time. That's basically a whole other part-time job added to a full-time job. Student activism is another strategy. United States Against Sweatshops, formed in 1997. It's a grassroots organization of youth and students who fight against labor abuses. Student activists have influenced more than 180 colleges and universities to affiliate with the Worker Rights Consortium, which investigates factories that produce clothing and other goods with school logos to make sure that the factory meets the code of conduct developed by each school. Here is an image of students protesting sweatshops against the Hanes business, which Hanes, underwears and t-shirts. So another response is responses to workplace health and safety concerns. In 2009, the Protecting America's Workers Act was introduced in Congress, a bill that would strengthen OSHA by extending coverage to uncovered workers. It was introduced in Congress and was reintroduced in Congress in 2013, but as of this writing, it has not passed. Behavior-based safety programs is another strategy used by business management that attributes health and safety problems in the workplace to workers' behaviors rather than work process and conditions. So here we see how this strategy right here is basically protecting the business rather than the worker. So work-life policies and programs. So federal and state family and medical leave initiatives. In 1993, President Clinton signed into law the first national policy designed to help workers meet the dual demands of work and family. The FMLA requires all public agencies and private sector employers with 50 or more employees who worked at least 1,250 hours in the preceding year to provide up to 12 weeks of job-protected, unpaid leave so they can care for a seriously ill child, spouse, or parent, stay home to care for their newborn, newly adopted or newly placed foster child, or take time off when they are seriously ill. So this strategy right here, whether it sounded great in the early 90s, it still needs some sort of upgrade, if you will, because this is unpaid leave. You have to work at a company with 50 or more employees. So if you work at a company with 49 or less employees, you don't get to benefit from the FMLA Act. Like I said, it's unpaid. And it's 12 weeks long. So, this is what women use when they have a child and they want to get 3 months, 12 weeks off because they're giving birth. This is what the law requires, but again, it has to be a company with 50 or more employees, and it is unpaid leave. So many women save up their sick days and vacation days, so that way they get some sort of income while they're off in maternity leave, and they can have a little longer time, more than just 12 weeks. So employer-based work-life policies, aside from government-mandated work-family policies, some corporations and employers have family-friendly work policies and programs, including unpaid or paid family and medical leave, child care assistance, assistance with elderly parent care, and flexible work options such as flex time, compressed work week, and telecommuting. So lastly, efforts to strengthen labor. 52% of Americans say labor unions mostly help the economy, and yet 41% say they hurt the economy. So there's also the merging of labor unions and building international cooperation and solidarity, which is important due to globalization. So understanding work and unemployment, on December 10th, 1948, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted and proclaimed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Among the articles of that declaration are the following. Before I get into them, I suggest that all of you read the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's not something that I don't even remember my high school talking about it. They may have not even introduced it to you, but it's worth a reading. So Article 23 says that everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and affordable conditions of work, and to protection against unemployment. Everyone with any discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. Anyone, without any discrimination has the right to equal pay or equal work. Everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented if necessary by other means of social protection. Everyone has the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his interests. Article 24. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitations of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. So, I want to leave off with one more video, and it basically talks about life in China, and it deals with, the aspect of globalization and what workers in China go through and what that looks like. And this would be the end for today.
Hi, so I'd like to talk a little bit about the people who make the things we use every day. Our shoes, our handbags, our computers, and cell phones. Now, this is a conversation that often calls up a lot of guilt. Imagine the teenage farm girl who makes less than $1 an hour stitching your running shoes, or the young Chinese man who jumps off a rooftop after working overtime assembling your iPad. We, the beneficiaries of globalization, seem to exploit these victims with every purchase we make, and the injustice feels embedded in these products themselves. After all, what's wrong with a world in which a worker on an iPhone assembly line can't even afford to buy one? It's taken for granted that Chinese factories are oppressive, and that it's our desire for cheap goods that makes them so. So this simple narrative equating Western demands and Chinese suffering is appealing, especially at a time when many of us already feel guilty about our impact on the world. But it's also inaccurate and disrespectful. We must be peculiarly self-obsessed to imagine that we have the power to drive tens of millions of people on the other side of the world to migrate and suffer in such terrible ways. In fact, China makes goods for markets all over the world, including its own, thanks to a combination of factors: its low costs, its large and educated workforce, and a flexible manufacturing system that responds quickly to market demands. By focusing so much on ourselves and our gadgets, we have rendered the individuals on the other end into invisibility, as tiny and interchangeable as the parts of a mobile phone. Chinese workers are not forced into factories because of our insatiable desire for iPods. They choose to leave their homes in order to earn money, to learn new skills, and to see the world. In the ongoing debate about globalization, what's been missing is the voices of the workers themselves. Here are a few. Bao Yongxiu. My mother tells me to come home and get married, but if I marry now, before I have fully developed myself, I can only marry an ordinary worker, so I'm not in a rush. Chen Ying. When I went home for the new year, everyone said I had changed. They asked me, "What did you do that you have changed so much?" I told them that I studied and worked hard. If you tell them more, they won't understand anyway. Wu Chunming. Even if I make a lot of money, it won't satisfy me. Just to make money is not enough meaning in life. Xiaojin. Now, after I get off work, I study English, because in the future, our customers won't be only Chinese, so we must learn more languages. All of these speakers, by the way, are young women, 18 or 19 years old. So I spent 2 years getting to know assembly line workers like these in the South China factory city called Dongguan. Certain subjects came up over and over: how much money they made, what kind of husband they hoped to marry, whether they should jump to another factory or stay where they were. Other subjects came up almost never, including living conditions that to me looked close to prison life. 10 or 15 workers in one room, 50 people sharing a single bathroom, days and nights ruled by the factory clock. Everyone they knew lived in similar circumstances, and it was still better than the dormitories and homes of rural China. The workers rarely spoke about the products they made, and they often had great difficulty explaining what exactly they did. When I asked Lu Qinmin, the young woman I got to know best, what exactly she did on the factory floor, she said something to me in Chinese that sounded like "qiuxi." Only much later did I realize that she'd been saying QC, or quality control. She couldn't even tell me what she did on the factory floor. All she could do was parrot a garbled abbreviation in a language she didn't even understand. Karl Marx saw this as the tragedy of capitalism, the alienation of the worker from the product of his labor. Unlike, say, a traditional maker of shoes or cabinets, the worker in an industrial factory has no control, no pleasure, and no true satisfaction or understanding in her own work. But like so many theories that Marx arrived at sitting in the reading room of the British Museum, he got this one wrong. Just because a person spends her time making a piece of something does not mean that she becomes that, a piece of something. What she does with the money she earns, what she learns in that place, and how it changes her, these are the things that matter. What a factory makes is never the point, and the workers could not care less who buys their products. Journalistic coverage of Chinese factories, on the other hand, plays up this relationship between the workers and the products they make. Many articles calculate how long would it take for this worker to work in order to earn enough money to buy what he's making. For example, an entry-level line assembly line worker in China in an iPhone plant would have to shell out 2.5 months' wages for an iPhone. But how meaningful is this calculation really? For example, I recently wrote an article in the New Yorker magazine, but I can't afford to buy an ad in it. But who cares? I don't want an ad in the New Yorker, and most of these workers don't really want iPhones. Their calculations are different. How long should I stay in this factory? How much money can I save? How much will it take to buy an apartment or a car, to get married, or to put my child through school? The workers I got to know had a curiously abstract relationship with the product of their labor. About a year after I met Lu Qinmin, or Min, she invited me home to her family village for the Chinese New Year. On the train home, she gave me a present, a Coach brand change purse with brown leather trim. I thanked her, assuming it was fake, like almost everything else for sale in Dongguan. After we got home, Min gave her mother another present, a pink Dooney & Bourke handbag. And a few nights later, her sister was showing off a maroon Sportsack shoulder bag. Slowly, it was dawning on me that these handbags were made by their factory, and every single one of them was authentic. Min's sister said to her parents, "In America, this bag sells for $320. Her parents, who are both farmers, looked on speechless. And that's not all. Coach is coming out with a new line, 2191, she said. One bag will sell for 6,000. She paused and said, "I don't know if that's 6,000 yuan or 6,000 American dollars, but anyway, it's 6,000. Min's sister's boyfriend, who had traveled home with her for the New Year, said, "It doesn't look like it's worth that much." Min's sister turned to him and said, "Some people actually understand these things. You don't understand shit." In Min's world, the Coach bags had a curious currency. They weren't exactly worthless, but they were nothing close to their actual value, because almost no one they knew wanted to buy one or knew how much it was worth. Once, when Min's older sister's friend got married, she brought a handbag along as a wedding present. Another time, after Min had already left the handbag factory, her younger sister came to visit, bringing 2 Coach signature handbags as gifts. I looked in the zippered pocket of one, and I found a printed card in English, which read, "An American Classic. In 1941, the burnished patina of an all-American baseball glove inspired the founder of Coach to create a new collection of handbags from the same luxuriously soft, glove-tanned leather. 6 skilled leather workers crafted 12 signature handbags with perfect proportions and a timeless flair. They were fresh, functional, and women everywhere adored them. A new American classic was born." I wonder what Karl Marx would have made of Min and her sisters. Their relationship with the product of their labor was more complicated, surprising, and funny than he could have imagined. And yet, his view of the world persists in our tendency to see the workers as faceless masses, to imagine that we can know what they're really thinking. The first time I met Min, she had just turned 18 and quit her first job on the assembly line of an electronics factory. Over the next 2 years, I watched as she switched jobs 5 times, eventually landing a lucrative post in the purchasing department of a hardware factory. Later, she married a fellow migrant worker, moved with him to his village, gave birth to 2 daughters, and saved enough money to buy a second-hand Buick for herself and an apartment for her parents. She recently returned to Dongguan on her own to take a job in a factory that makes construction cranes, temporarily leaving her husband and children back in the village. In a recent email to me, she explained, "A person should have some ambition while she is young, so that in old age she can look back on her life and feel that it was not lived to no purpose." Across China, there are 150 million workers like her, 1/3 of them women, who have left their villages to work in the factories, the hotels, the restaurants, and the construction sites of the big cities. Together, they make up the largest migration in history. And it is globalization, this chain that begins in a Chinese farming village and ends with iPhones in our pockets and Nikes on our feet and Coach handbags on our arms, that has changed the way these millions of people work and marry and live and think. Very few of them would want to go back to the way things used to be. When I first went to Dongguan, I worried that it would be depressing to spend so much time with workers. I also worried that nothing would ever happen to them, or that they would have nothing to say to me. Instead, I found young women who were smart and funny and brave and generous. By opening up their lives to me, they taught me so much about factories and about China and about how to live in the world. This is the Coach purse that Min gave me on the train home to visit her family. I keep it with me to remind me of the ties that tie me to the young women I wrote about. Ties that are not economic but personal in nature, measured not in money but in memories. This purse is also a reminder that the things that you imagine sitting in your office or in the library are not how you find them when you actually go out into the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. That was an insight that a lot of us haven't had before. But I'm curious, if you had a minute, say, with Apple's head of manufacturing, what would you say?
1 minute.
1 minute.
You know, what really impressed me about the workers is how much they're self-motivated, self-driven, resourceful. And the thing that struck me, what they want most is education to learn, because most of them come from very poor backgrounds. They usually left school when they were in 7th or 8th grade. Their parents are often illiterate. And then they come to the city and they, on their own, at night during the weekends, they'll take a computer class or they'll take an English class and learn really, really rudimentary things, you know, like how to type a document in Word or how to say really simple things in English. So if you really want to help these workers, start these small, very focused, very pragmatic classes in these schools. And what's going to happen is all your workers are going to move on, but hopefully they'll move on into higher jobs within Apple. And you can help their social mobility and their self-improvement. When you talk to workers, that's what they want. They do not say, I want better hot water in the showers, I want a nicer room, I want a TV set. I mean, it would be nice to have those things, but that's not why they're in the city, and that's not what they care about.
Was there a sense from them of a narrative that things were kind of tough and bad, or was there a narrative of some kind of level of growth, that things over time were
definitely. I mean, it was interesting because I spent basically 2 years hanging out in the city, Dongguan, and over that time you could see immense change in every person's life. Upward, downward, sideways, but generally upward. If you spend enough time, it's upward. And I met people who had moved to the city 10 years ago and were now basically urban middle-class people. So the trajectory is definitely upward. It's just hard to see when you're suddenly sucked into the city. It looks like everyone's poor and desperate, but that's not really how it is. Certainly, the factory conditions are really tough, and it's nothing you or I would want to do. But from their perspective, where they're coming from is much worse, and where they're going is hopefully much better. And I just wanted to give that context of what's going on in their minds, not what necessarily is going on in yours.
Thanks so much for your talk. Thank you very much.
So I hope that video gave you guys some insight on the effects of globalization, whether they're both positive and negative. But she clearly talked about how the environment of the jobs and how many of these workers are living in conditions that we would not live in. So we need to ask ourselves, I know it's hard to say, don't buy a cell phone, don't buy Nikes, don't buy all these products that are made there, because at the end of the day, there's hardly anything made here in the United States. So it is a tough thing to accomplish, saying that I will not buy anything made from any of these countries because, or any of these companies per se, due to the fact that the way they treat their workers. But it's just extremely difficult to being able to purchase so many things that are made solely in the United States. So that's going to end our lecture for today. Remember to take the lecture quiz, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.